This video is going to teach you the capital letters I, J, K, and L in Faux Calligraphy. So again, we have our baseline, header line, and ascender. This is where our lowercase letters would normally go. Starting with the letter I is pretty simple. We're going to make our main stem, which again is going to be slanted along our guidelines. And to add some thickness, just turn it into a long rectangle. And then add some crossbars at the top and bottom. You can choose to make these straight, or I like to give them a little bit of a wave. Second version is going to start basically the same way. But instead of closing off the top and the bottom with a horizontal line, I'm going to let my crossbars close those parts off. So I'm going to make the top one wavy, but I'm actually going to start it at this point and then curve around and then finish with a wavy line. So this part is going to be kind of like an oval shape and then a wavy line. And then the bottom will add a wave as well. And then just to make it even a little more different from this one, we'll add some shading up here and at the bottom, which we did on the capital E and F in the last video. So just made an angled short line right here and then brought it back in curved towards that main line. Now for the style of I that is based on the copper plate style of calligraphy, we're going to start with this elongated, almost like an S shape, where we curve and then go straight along the slant and then curve again at the bottom. And then I'll add my shade where I start at the top, come outward, and then back in. And finish with a teardrop shape. Then lastly, to finish this eye, we're going to start at the top and swing out a little bit, and then the last part is you can think of it as being just a large oval shape, and it'll go through the stem of the eye. So I'll start by coming out, and then at this point now I'm thinking about making an oval, but I'm going to lift my pen right there. So this turns into like a large oval shape. And at this point I was coming down, so I'm going to add shade right there. The first two versions of the J are just going to be like a typical capital J that you might draw. I'm going to add a parallel line on the inside of this curve, but I'm not going to close it off at the top. I'm going to add my wavy line at the top to close it off. The second one I'm going to make almost the exact same way. But to switch it up, I'm going to add that little shade like we did on this eye at this point, and then also at the top, wave. Okay, the capital J in this style is going to be very similar to the I, except instead of finishing it here at the baseline like we did for the I, we're going to extend below and make a shape that's similar to our descending stem loop, where we go below the baseline and make a loop. We'll start at the top and curve inward and then go straight, go below the baseline and loop inward. So this is just like a really extended descending stem loop. Normally we start our descending stem loop at the header line, come straight down and around, so just like this, except now we're starting higher, curving inward, and then making our descending stem loop. Okay, now I'm going to add my shade over here. And this shade is pretty hard to do because it's such a long shape. And then same as this eye, it's going to be like the exact same shape that we just made on the eye. So starting at the top and curving out a little bit, and then making this oval-ish shape. We'll add some shade right there. Now to finish off this loop, you can either continue through and then go back up as if it's like an exit stroke and entrance stroke, or you can curve down a little bit. I'm just going to curve down a little, like that. The first K is going to start with our main stem, which again is just a long rectangle along the main slant. And then pretty basic, we're just going to start at the top, make an angled line in, and then another angled line towards the baseline. And here we're going to add some shading by making a a short angled line off of there and then meet it at a point right here. So, or you could start here and then come outward. And then same with this piece. Like that, pretty basic. For the second one, we'll start with the same stem. But instead of making these two lines straight, we're going to curve them a little bit. So this one will curve inward. And then this one is actually going to be pretty similar to how we ended the lowercase k, which you can think of this as being like a compound curve shape, like that. And then we're going to add this little embellishment on the left to balance it out a little. And I'm going to add a small shade at the top. And then this part, I'm going to shade it like it's a compound curve, like we did in the lowercase letters. The last K is going to start the same way that we started with this I, that stem shape. So that basically goes curve, straight, curve. And then add a teardrop at the end. Okay, so now the next line that I'm going to make, I'm not going to make it straight, I'm not going to make it curve once, I'm going to make it curve twice. So basically like how this one curves, I'm going to start, curve, straight, curve. And that's kind of a complicated motion to get down. Just think about it as curving towards the slant line, then making a straight line, and then curving back. And then we'll end this one the same way we did that. You can even add in a little loop right there. And then finish with our compound curve shape. And let me add my shading to those two lines. So we had some right here and right here. Where when I add the shade, I'm following the same curved part, and then when it's straight, it's just staying that width and then curving back towards the line. And then over here, I'm just gonna make an oval shape that meets back at the top. So I'm gonna start here and make an oval and then come back to the top. And this was a downstroke, so I'm going to add a little bit right there. So a really fancy K. I think it looks really nice. Just break it down into those shapes. This first L is going to be very simple. We'll just have our main stem again. Can close it off when I cross the bottom, and I'll make this a little bit wavy. So I just made this a little shorter than the top ascender line. You can make it go all the way to the top. Sometimes I just make it go a little bit below, just out of habit for some of these letters where I have something at the top, but you can make it go all the way up 2 spaces tall. Okay, this L is going to be a little fancy. I'm going to start with the same long curved shape that we've been doing, where I'm going to come down and then out. I'm gonna add my shade. Okay, now the bottom of this one is gonna be basically the same as that. I'm gonna start here and make a wavy line, not too wavy. And then here I'm gonna loop it around. So for this L, it's kind of a fancy L. You could start it here and then loop around and then make this shape, but that's kind of complicated to do. So I did make this a downstroke, and you could add some shading right there. I'm going to actually leave it unshaded because I wanted to think of it as if I started here and came up and around, even though that's not actually what I did. Alright, the last L, starting the same exact way as this with our curved shape, and then we're going to go out to the left and actually finish with a loop. So you can think of this as a couple different ways, making a loop and then continuing through, or actually we're going to finish this and make a wavy line. So you could also think of this as coming down, and then at this point think about making a wavy line like we just did for these two. And then I'm going to add my shade. Now this part is going to be pretty similar to the capital C, if you remember that shape, where we're going to make an oval that starts here and then connects up here. So again, you can start here and come around and connect it, but if it's hard to connect, you can start here and then come around the other way. Like that. So that'll give the illusion that you started here and made all of this in one motion. And I'll add my line right there. Okay, so just looking at this, I probably should have made this line at the bottom of this L a little more wavy, but that's okay. So here's a recap of I through L.